adalah narasumbernya adalah Dr. Ashley Randall dari Arizona State University. Thank you very much, Ashley, for coming over here. Dan acara ini akan dipandu oleh moderator kita dari jauh. Jadi sebetulnya Ashley datang ke sini jauh-jauh dari Amerika, tapi moderatornya malah pergi ke Australia. Ya. Jadi Hanum adalah dosen di Fakultas Psikologi UI dan beliau juga sekarang sedang S3 di University of Queensland, Brisbane, Australia. Terima kasih Hanum sudah mau menjadi moderator di acara ini.
My pleasure, Mbak.
Oke, acaranya dalam bahasa Inggris. Ya, kalau nanti ada pertanyaan bisa diajukan kepada moderator kita. Kalau misalnya tidak convenient menggunakan bahasa Inggris gitu ya, Hanum akan membantu. Baik, saya serahkan kepada moderator. Silakan moderator memulai, tapi dalam bahasa Inggris ya.
Aduh, ada pesan sponsornya. Oke, thank you Mbak Debbie.
Terima kasih. Ya.
Thank you for the introduction. And hi everyone, as Mbak Debbie said, my name is Lathifah Hanum and you can call me Hanum. I will be your moderator for today's session. So first of all, I want to apologize, like Mbak Debbie said, I'm not there. I'm not attending this research day in person and meet Ashley directly because I'm currently pursuing my PhD at the University of Queensland, Australia, but I hope this is okay with you. And this research day, today we will discuss about interpersonal issues in research. And our honorable speaker, Dr. Ashley K. Randall from Arizona State University, United States, will speak about theory and method of interpersonal changes. So Ashley, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you. And it's wonderful to see you virtually as well.
Thank you. So I hope you enjoy your visit to Indonesia, and please apologize me for not meeting you in person today. But before Ashley starts, allow me to give a brief introduction of her. I will only read her part of the CV because her CV is actually consists of 35 pages, so she is really productive. So I will try to summarize it. I hope you're okay with this, Ashley. So Ashley K. Randall is an associate professor in counseling and counseling psychology from Arizona State University. She has various affiliations in the USA and several countries in Europe. She is also a global learning system partner for Binus University here in Indonesia. Ashley graduated from Arizona State University with a degree in family studies and human development, and she also has many achievements. And the latest one is the Outstanding Teaching or Mentoring Award, Counseling and Counseling Psychology. As an academician, she is also very productive. You can Google her name by yourself and see that in her Google Scholar profile, she has many publications. The latest is about dyadic coping as a moderator between perceived relationship quality and emotional representation of COVID-19 in cognitive therapy and research journal. So today, Ashley will present about theory and method in interpersonal change. But before we start, please allow me to read the rules of this research day. While Ashley presents her topics, please mute your speaker so we can follow the presentation well. If you have any question, you can shoot your question in the chat room, and I will help you to deliver the question to Ashley. But you also allow to ask Ashley directly in the Q&A session. So you can just raise your hand for the participant offline, and the participant online in Zoom, you can also raise your hand, so I will pick you and allow you to ask Ashley. And we hope all the participants can attend this research day until finished and fulfill the evaluation survey at the end of the session. You will get the e-certificate sent by our committee to your registered email. So without further ado, I hope Ashley is ready. Are you good? Okay, I will give the time for you. Please, Ashley.
Terima kasih, Hanum. And it's wonderful to see you virtually. For those of you that don't know, Hanum and I actually know each other because I had the pleasure of meeting her when I was here in 2019, right? 2019. And it was really in that role that Hanum really had a vision for faculty and students at UI. And so it was all the work that you and I have been afforded the opportunity to do together, as well as then being currently in collaboration with Debbie, that I am really honored to be here. So Hanum, this visit would not be possible without your instrumental. Thank you so much for that. And certainly we miss you, although we're happy to visit you in Queensland. We just need to get our airline tickets first.
I'll wait for you.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Very good. So if I may, I believe, right, this very smart screen, which is smarter than I am. So maybe if you don't, yep, we can just, you're so kind. Amazing. Yep. Oh, okay. And then, oh, share sound, perfect. Great. Outstanding. Thank you. I continue to be amazed by all of this technology because we don't, I certainly don't teach with this smart technology at ASU. That being said, again, welcome everyone. I'm really delighted to be able to present some of this work to you all. For those of you that I've really had an honor and privilege to meet over the past couple of weeks, which has been a wonderful stay, here is that I wanted to present something a little bit different in terms of the application of how it is that we study and how it is that we understand some of our interpersonal emotion systems. So for those of you that have been here and attended some of the other workshops, we've learned a lot about deliberate processes of coping with stress, meaning how can we actually teach couples some of these skills like dyadic coping to be able to mitigate stress in their relationship? Because would you all agree that we all experience stress? Yes. I do this as a what we would call a temperature check. So that way, if someone in the room said, I never have experienced stress, I want you to be my new best friend because I want to know what your secret is. So that being said, we are going to talk together today about really understanding what we would consider these temporal interpersonal emotion systems. So we've talked a lot about in the past couple of weeks about how it is that we have these unconscious connections with our partner's emotions. And then conversely, we can have these conscious processes of coping with the stress. So today we're going to talk more about these unconscious processes or how our emotions are coordinated with our partners. And if at any time you have any questions, please do not hesitate. So here's a little roadmap of what we are going to be doing today. I want to talk to you about how it is that we can conceptualize interpersonal emotion dynamics. And the idea of interpersonal emotion dynamics just means two people. Okay. I happen to focus on romantic partners, and so you're going to see a lot of that work represented here. Although recognize for those of you that really enjoy attachment theory, we know that our relationships kind of form from our relationship with our primary caregiver. And a lot of the literature has focused on a child and their mother, or a child and their parent. So some of this early work has really laid the foundation for how it is that we can understand these dynamics in our personal relationships in adulthood. So we're going to talk about how do we conceptualize that. We're also going to talk about how do we define some of these terms, because there's a lot of terms that exist in the literature. And what happens when we use a lot of these terms is that we may use them differently. Just if I ask you, do you all experience stress? You may think about a specific stress that you're experiencing, yet that may not be the same stress that someone else is experiencing as well. So we're going to talk about definitions. We are also going to talk about designing and measuring, and that's going to be more of the methodological aspect of the talk. And then we're going to talk about an application of how do we bring this all together. So my hope is that throughout this session that you're going to maybe come up with some light bulb moments that we would say, just in terms of, wow, this is really cool. And how can we think about conducting some of the research that you all are doing here. So let's go ahead and start with conceptualization. So what do we mean when we're talking about interpersonal emotion systems? Now, before I begin, I would like us to think about the intrapersonal emotion experience. What we mean by intrapersonal experiences are the experiences that one individual may have. So take yourself, for example. You have a happy day, something really goes well, you have a stressful day, whatever may be happening in the context of your life, you have the way that you think about that experience, right? So our cognitions, you have how you feel about that experience, so our emotions, and then how it is that you respond to those experiences. So that's what we would be considering the intrapersonal or within person experience. Yet, we know, and we often say that we do not live in vacuums, meaning we are always being communicated with and communicating with others so that our experiences are shaped by really our situational context. Would you all agree with that? That often we're interacting with coworkers, we're interacting with our friends, we're interacting with our parents or our partners. So usually our reactions are a reflection of more of an interdependent or interpersonal experience. So moving from the intrapersonal, we can move, we're going to go to the interpersonal in just a second. But we can think about how it is that we move from this intrapersonal experience to the interpersonal, because we acknowledge that our relationships, and in particular, the relationships that we have with our romantic partner, has a function in how it is that we view the world, how it is that we regulate our emotions, and how it is that we then respond in situations. So that being said, let me go here. So the social functions of emotions is something that my colleague Dominic Shobi and I wrote about in our 2018 edited volume on interpersonal emotion dynamics. So if this work is super exciting and interesting to you all, which I hope it is, you can have access to this. I'm happy, of course, to share a PDF version with you because it's really a nice collection of scholars across the world that have come together to define these constructs and look at how our emotions are coordinated from early childhood experiences to peer relationships to adulthood. And there's also chapters on methodology and statistical analysis as well. Yet the point that I want to share with you here is that humans are social beings. No problem. No, that's perfect. Yeah, that's great. So we are social beings. We know from Baumeister and Leary that we all have a need to belong in our social context. So you can think about this. When you are in school, it's helpful for us to navigate the world when we have a friend or a group of peers that can help us feel as though that we are socially connected. This is a universal need. This is something that all humans have, is the need to belong, the need to feel accepted, the need to feel included. And so in that regard is that we may face threat. Now, Jim Cohn has written about, at the University of Virginia, has written about the social baseline theory of emotional threat. And the easiest example that Jim gives is that, let's say you are in the woods You're hiking in the woods, and there happens to be a bear in the woods. Now, I will let you know this is a complete hypothetical situation for me because I would not be hiking in the woods where there are bears. Okay, just wanted to let you know that I can't offer personal experience to this. Yet, we can think about if we are alone, that threat is pretty threatening, right? You're seeing the bear, you don't have someone there to help kind of process what should I do, where should we go, etc. Yet if we're with our close others, we have what Jim Cohn considers both load sharing, meaning that stress can be shared with whomever it is that we are facing that threat with, and risk distribution. So either the bear is going to eat me or the bear is going to eat someone else and my partner, right? So it just happens to be a hypothetical situation, yet we all face threats. Now, those threats, right, can be varying degrees. It doesn't necessarily have to be a life-threatening threat, yet it can also be a threat of loss, a threat of sadness, etc. Right? So we all face threats throughout our daily life. We know, importantly, that emotions are related not only to the initiation, but certainly to the development of our close relationships, right? So if we meet someone and we feel as though we have really positive feelings or interactions with them, we want to see them again. So that's how those positive emotions can help in the development of that relationship. Yet you all have likely heard a quote that I love saying, is that all relationships take work, and it's finding the person you want to do the work with. So you have to ensure that you maintain those relationships. For my student collaborators here that are furiously taking notes, I will repeat that quote. So it's all relationships take work. It's finding the person you want to do the work with. Got it? Got it. Excellent. Okay, very good. It's very good to write in a card, you know, like on holidays as well. Yeah, my partner can attest. Yeah, post it. Yeah, that's great. Even better. Yet, the idea is that our emotions and our relationships are not static, meaning we don't just sit there in one momentary, example and say, okay, we're not going to interact. We're just going to sit here and look at each other. No, we're doing things, we're interacting, we're talking, and relationships happen over time. Now, some of you that have been in the more clinically oriented talks that I've given is that if you think about a common research statistic, that on average, it takes couples 7 years to come to therapy. I want you to think about what that 7 years really means. Is that if we are interacting on a second-by-second basis, you can do the math of 60 seconds per minute. 60, my gosh, why am I blanking on my math now? 60 seconds in a minute. How many minutes are in an hour? 60, right? 24 times 24 times 365 days times 7. That ends up being over 22 billion series of interactions that you are working with as a clinician in session. Meaning we have to understand much better how it is that partners are communicating, what are they communicating, when are they communicating, and what are the outcomes of those communications. Because oftentimes we just reflect, like I had a dinner, with someone and, oh, this didn't work out really well. Well, what happened during that interaction to make me feel that way? We don't know, because we often think about certain things or not. And so we know that experiences and the expression of emotion has consequences. If someone says, I really enjoy spending time with you, the consequence is probably assuming that you enjoyed spending time with them as well, is that you want to see them again. That's a consequence. Alternatively, over time, if you and your partner are arguing or consistently disagreeing, we're likely to have conflict and we're likely to break up. So we know that emotions and how it is that we perceive behaviors have consequences for our relationships. So now let's talk about how it is that we define interpersonal emotion systems. And this is where I was going with that previous idea. So right now we've moved from an individual experience and we're moving it to an interpersonal experience or between a partner experience. So here is what you just saw before, right? You saw these two individuals interacting. You can replace this with any two individuals. It just happens to be a graphic that I've always used, yet please replace them with any people that, you know, have a more like identity association with yourself. So we know if we just take one element of these circles is that each individual, right, they have their own cognitions, emotions, and behaviors. Yet remember, as we talked about, we are social beings now. We always have been, yet for the purpose, we're trying to move ourselves from an individual to a systemic idea. And we know that our cognitions are coordinated with our partner. We often think about the same things. We think about things similarly or dissimilarly. Our emotions are coordinated. And I'll show you how that can be defined in just a second. And our behaviors are coordinated. So together, we are a system that interacts. Okay, so I want us to think about this and think about this in the context of you are meeting a friend or you're meeting your sibling and you're having a really great day. Your sibling or whoever it is that you are meeting is not having a good day. Do you continue to have like such a really great day, or do you kind of maybe like decrease your positivity because you want to be there to be able to cope with your friend? Right? Yeah, so you're not so positive anymore. And it's not because you're not still happy. You're just trying to help your friend kind of regulate that experience. So that happens unconsciously. That's what we consider our interpersonal dynamics. So here is some work that I did actually during my PhD studies with my advisor, the late Emily Butler, in 2013, where we really tried to understand what is meant about these interpersonal emotion systems. Because we know that these emotions are coordinated, yet there's different ways in which we can be coordinated. So let me start here with C here. So what happens is that you can see if you have, you know, like each line represents an individual, this idea of stress buffering, okay? So you can see here that one person is, in this case, the stranger, is kind of going along their day. Yet the person who is, you know, also going along their day, maybe they see a bear, okay? Or they come across a threat. Well, what happens is that because of the interaction that they have with that other person, their negative or their experience of arousal actually starts to decrease. Okay. Alternatively, right, so you can see there's like some regulatory capacity here. Alternatively, we may have what we consider morphogenic processes or what we would consider amplification or dampening of emotions. In terms of a positive experience, because I don't want us to just focus on the negative, and in terms of stress, is that we see a lot of this represented in Shelley Gable's work, where she's looked at the role of social capitalization. If something positive happens in your family or with your friends, we share in those positive emotions. And those positive emotions can almost become energetic for us. So if after sharing that, we then start to see both partners high in positivity. Conversely, we can also see both partners high in negativity, depending on the axis that you're changing this. So it can be the case that partners can really be happy together. They're maybe watching a really fun movie together. They're doing a fun activity. They're both high in positivity. Alternatively, if they have an argument, they're probably both high in negativity. Yet where the idea comes up is in how it is that our emotions can be regulated with one another. Now, in this 2013 paper in particular, which was part of my comprehensive exams and my doctoral dissertation, was looking at how can we redefine co-regulation? Because it's the idea that one partner regulates our interactions. So said differently, when we are communicating that we are stressed or we're facing a threatening situation, we need someone there, and hopefully our romantic partner, to help us downregulate those experiences of stress, right? Because we want to feel better. And so in this case, this is what we mean by co-regulation, is that it's not that your partner doesn't experience this as well, as evidenced by kind of this increase and then decrease, is that they help regulate these emotional experiences over time. So that brings us to, we can kind of have a theoretical understanding of interpersonal emotion dynamics. We can understand from our own examples about how it is that we may then experience some of these stressors, and also think about examples wherein our partner helps us to regulate those examples. So let's talk about designing and measuring. Now, ways in which, and this is actually from a chapter in the 2018 edited volume, that we have looked at interpersonal emotion systems are through naturalistic designs. Now, the challenge with kind of naturalistic designs is that we know that when people are being recorded, they are likely to act a little bit more positively, maybe try to regulate their own emotions. And so we have to be mindful of both threats to internal and external validity as well. In addition, you'll see some examples of dyadic interaction tasks where we bring couples into our couples observation lab and actually have them talk about areas of stress in their relationship. Alternatively, they may engage in a problem-solving task. So I was just listening to a talk the other week by Amy Gordon at the University of Michigan in the US, wherein she is actually bringing couples into the lab and having them solve puzzles together, also folding laundry and doing another task to see how it is that they interact, how do they delegate those tasks, and what are the outcomes. In addition, we also have experimental designs wherein we have more computer-mediated social interactions. This is a lot of work done by social psychologists when we're looking at how it is that we may interact in intergroup relations. Maybe do we pass the ball to one person? What makes us engage with others, etc. So a lot of different designs, but for our focus today, we're going to be focusing a lot on these dyadic interaction tasks. So let me give you a tangible example of applying some of these designs. Now, keep in mind that with all of these designs here is that we do have some element of cross-sectional data, meaning we ask couples to respond to empirically validated measures at one moment in time. Yet, because we know that emotions happen over the course of time and our interactions happen over time, we must use longitudinal, and I use that in quotations because our developmental psychologists will not think longitudinal is like a laboratory setting or a 14-day daily diary. They're mostly like, oh, 14 years? No, 14 days. So just be mindful that that's how we're using longitudinal here, is that we have to look at things across time. We have to get additional measurements to understand processes as they happen in the moment. So let's look at an application. So here's what we know and here's what we don't. So hopefully over the past couple of weeks and sharing the research that myself and other colleagues have done is that we know that stress has negative impacts on relationships. We know that stress can happen outside of the relationship, or this idea of external stressors. And in addition, stress can happen inside the relationship, or internal stressors. Oftentimes, with a paper that my colleague Guy Bodeman and I did in 2009 and an updated version in 2017, is that we don't necessarily know and think about those external stressors. So things that happen outside of our relationship that don't even happen to our partner immediately. we don't think about how those stressors can really impact our relationships. So think about it. You have a bad day at work and you have a continuously bad day at work. Or you're in a stressful environment where some aspect of your identity is not being accepted and you're continuously faced with that. Those have implications for your relationship. We know from Bodemann's stress divorce model that those stressors over time can impact how it is that we communicate with our partners, ultimately how our partners communicate with us. And if not properly dealt with, then we know that they have outcomes for relationship dissolution or breakup. So we know that stress is detrimental to a relationship. Yet what we have predominantly relied on has been cross-sectional data. So I've just given you the argument, right, that we need to understand things as they happen in the context of a conversation. Yet we don't know how stress unfolds when we're actually watching partners interact. Would you all agree with that so far? Great. Yes, that's correct. So examining temporal unveiling, or really time-bound constructs, has the greatest potential for understanding couples as a dynamic system. The idea of a dynamic system, or a dyadic dynamic system, or DDS, is the idea that we're a dyad, two people. We're dynamic, meaning we're changing over time, and we're a system. We're interconnected. So we need to understand how these interactions unfold in real time. So again, just as written here, is that a dynamic system is one that is composed of interdependent, because we know that our emotions are coordinated, our behaviors and our cognitions, interacting parts that in aggregate, meaning together, evolves over time. The idea of systemic thinking in and of itself means that while we have two individuals, we know from family systems theory is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Meaning we can't just say what's person A's experience and what's person B's experience. We have to look at how it is they're interacting together to create one joint experience. Similarly, in doing work with couples therapy, we can ask ourselves, how many clients do we have when we are working with a couple? And I'm going to ask those of you in the room here. So let's say you are a clinician, if you're not a clinician, and you're seeing a couple in session. How many clients do you have? So you're seeing two people. How many clients do you think? Just throw out a number. 2? Okay. Everyone agree with 2? More than 2. That's a very good answer because that encompasses a lot. Yeah, I love that answer because it's like, yeah, all of the above. Yeah. So what we would say is absolutely more than 2, and it's 3. So you were right, more than 2. Yeah, because 3 is more than 2. So that's good. The idea, though, is that we have both partners and their interaction. We have to understand how the partners, right, impact one another. So that's the idea here, is that we want to look at it in its aggregate or sum form. So how did we do that? So the goals of this study that I'm going to present to you all today is that we wanted to understand if and even how we could take measures of stress between partners taken from interactions, and I'll explain how we did that, could be related to different forms, and if so, are couples actually creating clusters? Meaning, are there actual patterns that we can have, let's say, between like so many couples fit into this pattern and so many couples fit into this pattern? Or are there no patterns whatsoever and all couples interact independently and we're not actually able to understand what happens in their conversation? And also, how it is that we thought about that is that if we're able to actually take couples and their interactions and cluster them or form different groups, are these interaction patterns at all related to their self-report measures? Meaning, especially in therapy and in research, we often ask couples, are you satisfied in your relationship? Do you feel as though you are supported by your partner? Do you feel that your relationship is of high quality? Well, often we ask these questions, but we don't necessarily know if they're satisfied. That's great that you're satisfied, but then how do you interact with your partner, right? What does that look like? So that's one of the things that we also wanted to see. So first was, can we actually even create these patterns of these temporal interpersonal emotion dynamics? If we can create those patterns, then are we able to then create groups and different types of couples? And if we're able to create different types of couples, are they associated with the reports that we are really relying on in most of our science, and that being self-report? So a little bit in terms of our participants. So this is a community sample of heterosexual committed couples from the Phoenix, Arizona area. In order to participate in this study, partners had to be over the age of 18. We use 18 as the legal adult age in Arizona in the US. This also means that we don't necessarily have to get parental consent, right, to participate in the study. They had to be in a romantic relationship for at least 6 weeks, because we know that 6 weeks is usually the minimum time for couples to establish an interdependence or kind of, that interdependent relationship between one another. And certainly both partners were willing to participate in the study. Now, this is always fun, because I will let you know by research is that in heterosexual couples, it's usually the female partner that is dragging her male partner into the lab. Like, wouldn't this be fun to do this weekend? Let's go do a research study. And usually the men are like, Yes, so both partners had to be willing. We had to get both partners' consent. We had 42 couples participate in this study, and they were on average together for 6 years. And then you can see here that on average, their ages were about 30 with their standard deviation here. So what did we have participants do? Well, first, we had participants certainly complete an inclusion survey because we wanted to ensure that they met the eligibility criteria. We gave them baseline questionnaires. So this is where we asked about their relationship satisfaction. What type of stress do you have in your relationship? How does your partner help you cope with that stress, etc.? And then we brought them into the lab. So we have a couples observation laboratory, which you're actually going to get to see a video example of in just a second. And we had them connected to physiology measures. So we gave them a little an E3 watch, which is a watch that measures heart rate, movement, etc. And we first wanted them to watch a nature film. Now, why we did this is to have them try to get down to their baseline physiological state, because we know that coming into the lab and being hooked up to all this equipment may be a little stressful. So we gave them a nature film to watch. As they then, after they watch this, which all of these, just so that you know, for internal validity, all of these were all 6-minute activities, is that we told the participants, we're going to be right back. We just have to check the computers in the other room. Now, what we did is we actually recorded them so that we had a baseline interaction of how it is they engage with one another. We could measure their baseline physiology, etc. Right? So that's that baseline. We then had them have a conversation about stress outside of the relationship, which we counterbalanced between partners. And we got the topics of this conversation, the internal stress and enjoyment, from the baseline questionnaires. So we asked participants, can you rate, your level of stress in these areas? And then we chose those topics here. So we started with an area of stress outside the relationship. Then we had couples talk about an area of internal stress or something that was affecting both partners. And this is the reason why this is in red, is that this is the data that I am going to be sharing with you. And then we often joke that we didn't want to add to the relationship dissolution rate. So we didn't want them to leave the lab stressed and upset with their partner. So we had them talk about areas that they really enjoy about their relationship. Throughout all of these conversations, these conversations were video recorded. And you'll actually see videos there with participant consent. Following that, we then showed those videos back to the participant. We said, you're going to watch your video of you having this conversation, and we want you to use this rating dial here. And we want you to rate, similar to Gottman and Levinson's method, can you rate on a second-by-second basis how stressed you were watching yourself in that conversation? Okay? So that's really important, because that is the only, like, besides physiological measures, in terms of self-report, that is the easiest way to understand kind of the self-reported video recalled emotional experiences, is by having people watch themselves back and rate how they felt. So we had them do that for all 3 tasks. Yeah. Okay. So a little bit in terms of some of the descriptive statistics in terms of our data. So what you can see here are how it is that participants overall rated their relationship satisfaction, their negative affect and positive affect, and you can see the correlations here. Yet one of the things to note is that the relationship satisfaction between men and women in their relationship was relatively equal and quite high. We used the relationship satisfaction scale. In addition, they also reported lower negative affect and about similarly kind of positive affect as well. So in this case, these are very, kind of representative of some of the self-report data that we see in relationship research, is that couples who are not satisfied in their relationship are not going to be ones that really want to come to the lab, right? Can you imagine you're not necessarily happy with your partner, and then you're like, I have a great activity for us to do. Let's go talk about our relationship while we're being video recorded. Probably not. Okay. All right. So here is where we're going to have a little bit more of an interactive session, is that I am going to share with you 2 video examples of couples interactions. We talked about how partners' emotions are interconnected. And so I want you to, as you are watching these videos, and I do apologize, these are in English, and unfortunately we don't have subtitles. So if you need me to clarify anything, please do let me know. I want you to think about, what do you think is going on as we're watching this interaction? If you had to graph that interaction, where do you think partners are? Okay. One point to note, this is not, I always joke that this is not a prayer study. So although participants' hands are like this, they're also not saying terima kasih and in the lab. One of the reasons why we have participants hold their hands together, and you're actually going to see an element of this from our research assistant, who was a doctoral student I worked with, and she's now a licensed psychologist at Mayo Clinic, is that you will see her ask participants to clap their hand. Why we did that is that they are wearing these watches. When the participants clap their hand, that spikes the physiology. So we know where to cut the data, so that when we're aligning the data, we can align the physiology with our behavioral observations and with that self-report measure to look at those multi-method experiences. So you'll actually see that. What you also see is participants wearing lapel microphones. That's, we've had colleagues who are interested in vocal analysis or paraverbal communication. And then you'll see here these rating dials. Something else to note when we do laboratory studies is that we try to set this up as best as possible as like a couple's living room. We collect this data in our counselor training center. So this is actually a therapy room that we use to train students. Yet what you can't see here is a screen where we put curtains, and then we have like a fake plant from IKEA here. So we What we do is we would counterbalance, although the videos that you're going to see, it just happens that the male participant is both by the window. Yet when we ran the couples, it's really important that you counterbalance to avoid any effects. So couple 1, male and female, couple 2, male and female, right? So we counterbalance those. So any questions on the design, whether it be from our online participants or in the room? Any questions before you start your observational data analysis?
What are their reactions when they know they are in the situation?
So what's the reaction when they know they're being observed? It's a very good question. Usually people are going to be pretty, I would say even more aware that they're being, video recorded, and so they may not necessarily be as natural in their interaction. Yet by this time, that's why we took the conversation that's like kind of the third conversation in, because we're hoping that they've kind of relaxed in terms of the environment. And it's the truest way that we can get to like a naturalistic conversation. Good question. You're welcome. Thank you. Any questions online? Nope. Excellent. Okay. So here is what we are going to do. So remember, you're going to watch this conversation. And then I just want you to think about, and what we often say is marinate on what you think your observations are. And I'm going to have you watch another couple. Okay. And also, I'm really curious about your cultural observations of these two couples, being that they're both from the US, but we can talk about that later.
We clap at the same time. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. So please do not start your conversation until the screen tells you to do so.
Insufficient behavior. Really not helping out enough around the house, possibly. So let's talk about that.
I think that because I obsessively clean and arrange things, that I take on more responsibility with cleaning and putting stuff away than you do.
I think so too. And I don't think that it's an excuse for me to say that I'm busy with the program, because I can take time to do things. Like I still mow and do the trash and like little chores, but I don't, like when it comes to like cleaning the bathroom, like that's something I could do the bathrooms. Like what helps me, because I'm a very like structured person in a lot of ways, is like if it's like on Saturday mornings we clean, and like knowing that like, okay, we're gonna like clean the house. That's like what it was like when I was a kid and I'm still a child. So that would be helpful. Seriously, if it was like, okay, Saturday morning, like we know we're going to clean the house, we're going to do a cleaning. But I feel like you throughout the week do things, or like you'll be like, oh, I'm going to do the floors. I'm like, I was just doing the floors. Like I'm typing a paper. So I think we should have defined roles. I think that's good. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that you have a defined role of mowing the lawn and taking out the trash.
I don't
and
feel like
do
that's
that
enough.
on a regular basis.
What are you talking about?
You don't mow the lawn consistently.
I mow it weekly. Every week I mow. Like on a set day, or like at least once a week?
You're saying that we should clean on Saturday mornings or whatever, so when do you mow the lawn?
On the weekend. I find a time during the weekend to mow. But that
Did
doesn't
you mow
involve
last weekend?
you. Yeah, I had to mow. You made me mow during the week before your mom got there. So yeah, I mowed. It was on a Sunday. I mowed Sunday night last weekend. And this weekend I will mow. And mowing will happen. Don't worry about the grass.
It's not even that we have to come up with a set schedule for us to like do certain chores at different times, but like just little stuff like when you put your dishes in the sink, just like put them in the dishwasher instead of putting them on the counter.
Is there a good way to know if it's dirty or not?
Yeah, you open it and you look and see if there's a dirty plate inside.
Okay.
Okay, I recognize that we don't necessarily have really good volume in our room here, so I just wanted to recap a little bit for those of you that weren't able to hear. So insufficient partner behavior, we had the male participant go first. Okay, insufficient behavior from myself, and I don't mow the lawn and I, don't do the dishes and I don't pick up. And then in the subsequent frame is that you have the female partner tell the male partner, oh, you want me to be more affectionate to you. And that's not something that I do. Yet you can hopefully observe over the course of this interaction that the couple is pretty jovial, right? They're pretty happy. They're engaging with one another. There's a good back and forth in terms of their interaction. Would you all agree? Yeah. Anything that stood out to you about their interaction with one another? Maybe their posture, how far they were sitting. Well, they are asked, the seats are standardized, but anything that you observed about the dynamics of interaction? Please.
Okay, so from what I observed, I think the female partners seems a little bit more tense than the male partners, and that's why I caught it when the male partner have more bodily language wise, more active than the female partner, and the female partner tend to just lay on her back, tense up, and not moving.
So very much like you see the male partner engaged, trying to lean forward into the conversation, and the female partner is kind of reserved and very like static, which is great because actually we told the participants, thank you so much. We told the participants not to move, and I think the female participant really took that directive, right? We're like, don't move for your physiology. And she was like, not moving. Right, got it. Yeah, but we of course want them to interact. Very good. So overall, right, how do you think, like, and I want you to think about this. If you had to graph, or maybe in your head, think about their emotional pattern, not stressed, stressed, maybe think about how you would graph that for this couple. Okay. Now I'm going to show you another couple.
Thank you. And please do not start talking before the screen tells you to do so. Thanks.
There's a screen here that tells the participants to start talking, and that way, again, we can monitor that behavior or mark it with the data.
So, partner behaviors?
Difficult partner behaviors. Did you have something in mind for this one? Because I remember what I was thinking of.
What were you thinking of? Let's start with that.
Okay. So, I was thinking of, so that day you had been playing video games a lot, and...
Which day?
Well, no, I'm just saying the day that we filled out the survey you had been.
Oh.
Or like the day before or something.
Right.
So what I had been thinking of is, like, playing games for hours on end when I want to hang out with you.
Mm-hmm.
Is it behavior? So like gaming, I guess, is a behavior.
I guess so, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's like an ignoring you kind of behavior.
Yeah.
Of sorts.
Sort of.
Okay.
So that's cool to talk about?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's do that.
Okay.
So, are there any days where you feel like you want to hang out more, or?
Yeah. I think what's most annoying to me is, like, I feel like it always happens to be days where I want to hang out with you and like relax, where I've been stressed out at work that day or something, are the days where Frank or Josh happen to be free, so you're like, I'm gonna hang out with them. And like, I understand that like some days a week, that's fine, because honestly, I probably would be good if I like got work done when you were doing that. Right. But it just happens to always be on days where like I don't want to get work done, I want to relax. And then I can't use the TV, I can't hang out with you, I can't like watch shows that we're watching together because I have to wait for you. So I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with myself? Like, I don't want to be mad at you because like I understand that you want to hang out with your friends and you want to do this stuff, and like you can't do it during the day the same way because, you know, they're working. Right. But also I'm like, I want you to bring it for me.
I get you. I try to give like at least the weekends too.
Yeah, that's true.
Typically, since I can't really do much else a lot of the time.
Well, I mean, you don't get up till like 6.
Yeah. So usually like on the weekends, except for the last month because we've had things, I'll usually try and, you know, dedicate that to you.
That's true. I think it would just be helpful if I knew farther in advance when you were going to.
I wish I did too.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you don't either, but it's just like sucks when it's like 5 o'clock and I'm like getting ready to hang out and like relax finally, and then you're like, oh, actually, I want to play games, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, if there's any way to know like ahead of time a little bit more.
Yeah. I don't know though, because it's tricky because like they can't play some days and then they can't play others. And it's like, I don't know when they're open.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with Josh, like he's very off and on.
Yeah.
Okay. I often joke that I don't think I'd be friends with this couple because it's like pulling teeth, right, for that interaction. Anyway, observations for this dyad. What did you see? Please.
I actually think that the woman has more stress level because the boy, I assume that he is the type of boy that leave problems under the bed, but the woman try to interact what problem they are facing, but the boys didn't really give a positive behavior or attitudes towards her action to open up with her problem. So I think the stress level for the woman is higher, but I have no idea about the dynamic of stress for the boy itself.
Okay, excellent. So we may see some high levels, right? So we may just see like consistently high levels. Do you think she stays relatively high, or do you think she's high and then low, or and then high, or?
I think it's relatively high.
Relatively high.
Yeah,
okay.
Because at first I see that there's a tendency where the woman is kind of nervous to start talking to the couples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Other observations? Please.
So if when I compare it from the first couple, I noticed that whomever start the first conversation, they tend to have more tense and more stress. So based on my observation from the first couple, where the male partner start the conversation, he had more heightened stress. And also in the second couple, the female that start the conversation tend to have higher stress, although she had compare like a baseline level stress in the beginning. But if I compare it between couple, whomever start the conversation, I don't know based on the rest of the data, but based on that these two couple, I find that the interaction, both of their interaction, although it's masked within a joking manner, they do have a heightened stress, but whomever start the conversation, they tend to have consistent higher stress level compared to their partner.
Excellent observations. Very good in terms of like who may be initiating the conversation, how it is that they are talking about that, what they are talking about, etc. So very good. So now think about your observations between these two couples, because I will let you know that these two examples of couples actually are part of two different clusters. So I'll let you know we were actually able to cluster the data between two different types of couples. Multiple couples fit into each cluster. These just happen to be two video examples of those. So let me tell you a little bit about the data preparation. So first, we had time series data. Remember, we had participants watch these videos back, rate on a 0 to 100 scale, 0 being no stress, 100 being high stress. And we had them rate on a second-by-second basis across that conversation. So what you can see here is an actual example of the data. Red lines being the females, blue lines being the males. However, from a 0 to 100 scale, which I thought, let's give participants a variability and range. We found that participants kind of either stuck around like the 75 mark or they stuck around the 50 mark and didn't necessarily go from 10 to 90. So what we did in order for ease of data analysis is that we collapsed the time series data on a 1 to 5 scale. Okay, so we look at this. So again, blue line's male, red line's female. These are their stress levels across time. Okay, so you can see how the data is actually visually represented. Now, if I left this just as such, I would be showing you, okay, we can look at each partner's intrapersonal experience or their own experience compared to their partner, yet we're not sure how that dyad works as a system. So we then collapse this data into a couple level data. So what you are seeing here is how the couple has functioned across time. It's taking the average of the male and female partners and creating a couple level here. So what we can see is that, you know, there's some stress, kind of goes down, some stress goes down, etc., right, over time, but a lot of variability, okay? That being said, we did these graphs for each of the 42 dyads. And here is what we found. Using entropy in cluster analysis, using like dynamic dyadic systems analysis or DDS, we were actually able to cluster the couples. We had some couples that fell into cluster 1, some clusters that fell into couple 2. Here is an example of one of the couples that you saw. This is their actual data as a couple. And here is the other couple's data. Tell me, does this graph represent the first video that you watched or the second video that you watched? How many of you, so raise your hand if you think this is the first video. Raise your hand high. Okay, wave to everyone in the room. Wave. Hi. And you can say, hi, I got the answer incorrect, but I'm really happy to be here. Yay. Yes. Okay, so no. Okay, so for those of you that thought, good job over here. Whoops. I got so excited I pushed the screen back. For those of you that thought this is couple 2's data, you are correct. This is couple 1's data. Now, here is what we can deduce from this data. We have couples in their conversation that are relatively stable. We would say that they're pretty emotionally inflexible, right? Because they're pretty standard. Irrespective of how the one partner may have led that stress, together as a unit, they're inflexible. They're not necessarily being positive and negative. They're just being, here's our emotion, this is our emotion. Conversely, couple 1 that you saw was pretty flexible in terms of their emotions. We know from Peter Kupin's work at KU Leuven, actually, who does a lot of work on emotional inertia, that the more flexible we are in terms of our emotions, the better, right? Now, there's obviously clinical levels of that emotional variability when we talk about bipolar disorder, and so we're talking certainly at the non-clinical level of having that emotional flexibility. Yet, you can see how all of these little black lines here are actually all of the dyads that mapped onto cluster 1. These are all the dyads that mapped onto cluster 2, and you can see their average here. Yet what these data reflect is that we can take momentary analyses, we can ask how partners are feeling in the moment, and actually create clusters of couples. We can say this is how some people interact in these conversations, and this is how some people interact in these conversations, and they're different. So in short, right, this provides evidence for how it is that we can map these interpersonal emotion dynamics. Now that in and of itself, from a methodological and a statistical aspect, are important, right? These are important advancements about how we can use some of these data to understand interactions. Yet we wanted to take it one step further in terms of what do these interactions mean based on what we, quote, know about couples' interactions. So we can think about this. For couples that are pretty inflexible, do you think they're high on relationship satisfaction or low on relationship satisfaction? Conversely, the question here, right? So we have to think about this. And here is what we found when we looked at between cluster comparisons. I will sadly let you know that there was no difference in terms of age between partners, between the clusters, because oftentimes we think of those that are in longer relationships may have, either greater quality, greater stability. We didn't find that. We didn't find that relationship length, which is obviously highly correlated with age, predicted that as well. Yet most importantly, we didn't find that relationship satisfaction differed. So irrespective of how you're interacting in the course of the interactions, the measurement tools that we currently have and rely on don't really help us understand these interpersonal emotion dynamics. You can ask couples how satisfied they are, and you can ask couples their quality of their relationship, yet we don't really know what happens in a moment-to-moment basis of these interactions. So together, I'm hoping that this, just a brief example of some of this work that we've done, really helps you kind of feel invigorated and fueled to think about different research questions. Are we really asking the questions that help us understand how people interact? For those of you that care about parent-child interactions, what happens when they are communicating? How do those then have implications for development over time? We've applied some of these similar methods to mentor and mentee conversations for women, and in particular women in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math, and doctoral programs, to understand how mentors are communicating their support and what this means then for their attrition and satisfaction in their program. So a lot of research implications of moving us more from cross-sectional data to looking at longitudinal analyses or momentary experiences. And then certainly clinical interventions. We often ask couples to complete a battery of assessments when they come into session. We have them report how satisfied are you in your relationship, what's the quality of your relationship, do you have conflict in your relationship? And partners respond to those questions. But what this data just showed as an initial attempt is that those self-report measures do not in any way map on to our momentary experiences. Because likely those are based on our own perceptions and our own biases. And you can fill out a questionnaire one day and those results probably are highly likely or auto-correlated with your reports the next day, yet they may change, right? We have good days and we have bad days. So all of this being said is that I hope that these results, these methodological tools that I have shared with you help you think about and fuel some ideas in terms of what it's meant by, how it is that we can understand and help couples think about stress in their relationship, how they communicate the stress, and the implications for their well-being across time. And with that, I would like to thank you. Terima kasih. So I'm certainly happy to take questions, whether that be from online, here in the audience as well.
Yes, big thank you for your inspiring presentation, Ashley. I actually learned a lot.
My pleasure, and I'm glad.
Yeah, because my study is about intergenerational coincidence, so I evaluate the relationship between aging parents and their adult children. So yeah. Your presentation is making me inspired. Thank you. So is there any question from the participant, offline or online? I cannot see the participant offline. Do you have any question? Absolutely, you can ask Ashley directly. Oh, I think everyone, if you have any question in Bahasa Indonesia, I will be glad to translate it for Ashley. So you can shoot your question anytime. I will help you to translate it. So just write your question. So.
Okay, can I ask a question? This is Frida Mangunso. I cannot open my video right now. Is okay, Ashley? Yeah, it's interesting me how you do the experiment. When you are asking the couples to do something like you must be looking or performs like this, and then you record. This is like the heartbeat or not. It is, you see that this could be a real when they are asking to be like something. When they do the question, it is not a natural, is all right? It's not a natural. You asking them to do something like for the other partner and do the reaction. And how you counting all the reactions. This is very interesting to know that.
Yes, thank you for your question. So if I understood correctly, is that are we asking couples to naturalistically respond? So respond as if they normally would in the course of their interaction. And the answer is yes, absolutely. We want people to react as naturally as possible. And so that's why we do kind of that nature film to calm people down. We do the baseline interaction to have them get used to interacting with their couple in a laboratory setting. And then we have them engage in these conversations. In addition, we take those momentary measures of emotional experience, or the measures from the rating dial, and those are on a second-by-second basis. In addition, the physiological measures are also on a second-by-second basis. And so we take these moments of each second by second, and that's why you saw on the graph in terms of the x-axis, it was up to 350, because we had 350 data points per couple and per person, because we were looking at that across the number of minutes. So did that answer your question? Or if not, please help me so that I can better answer your question.
I'm curious to know that it's not the only measure to show the graphic. Probably did you give also kind of questionnaire about the stress level and how the relationships being done so far, so we can conclude it from more than one measurement or the graphic?
Yes, so we actually have that self-report measure at baseline. So we compare not only the self-report measures that we get at baseline, we have the momentary measures of emotional experience. We also have their physiology ratings, and then we've also done behavioral observation coding on these videos to then code what's actually going on. So we actually have multi-method approaches to analyzing this data to understand these interpersonal emotion systems.
It's really interesting. I wonder if Hanum could also give something like different culture, like Indonesian people that I think your research is on Indonesian, is that right? The intergeneration. Do you think that we can do some kind of experiments and asking the emotion could be like regulated and showing naturally like that? Probably you can give also your research experience that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you for your question.
Thank you. So here we have a question from Mbak Pinkan. She cannot open her mic, but she asking about, is the graph consists of rating for couples or from their physical measurement? So Mbak Pinkan wants to know for the graph, is it consists of like the heart rate of our participants and so on?
Yes, so the graph that you saw, and thank you for your question. The graph that you saw is actually from the rating dial itself. So we took the ratings from the participants themselves and then graphed those. So you're actually seeing how they perceived themselves to be stressed in that interaction. And that's why you saw some people were like, oh, I kind of feel stressed right now. I'm not necessarily feeling stressed, etc. Does that help answer your question, or did you have follow-up questions to that?
Yeah, we're waiting. Okay. I think it's okay from Mbak Pinkan. And we continue with another question from Bu Ali Yuliandari. So she is wondering, you count also about the emotional exchange between the parties?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So excellent question. So in this context, what we have looked at with this research is really just how the emotions change over the course of the interaction. Some of the other work that I had mentioned that we're doing with mentor and mentee dyads in particular is looking at what information is being communicated and how then the partner, or in this case, the mentor or the mentee, is then responding to that interaction. So we are actually looking at that in a different sample to take into consideration what type of emotion is being conveyed, and then how is that emotion being responded to. And so hopefully we actually just have a minor revise and resubmit on that. And so my hope is that it'll be published in the next couple of months. So I'll keep you posted.
It's productive. Oh, so actually Mbak Pinkan is curious how the graph would be with the heart rate data. It's how you convert it.
Excellent question. So what we have found in another paper looking at actually, so not necessarily the physiology measures, but more of taking the video data and looking at the facial or fax coding of like the facial emotion expressions. We've mapped that onto the self-report data. Not surprisingly, what we find is that people's own perceptions of their emotions do not necessarily correlate with some of these nonverbal indicators, meaning the physiology may look similar or it may look different because we're not necessarily that great at rating our own emotions. So we haven't done something yet with this physiology data. I'm working with another student who's actually using the physiology data for his previous master's thesis. He's now a PhD student at another university. So another project that I will be working on this summer. And so as you can see, I'm giving a research talk and certainly not a talk on work-life balance because I have yet to figure that out because I love research and I do it all the time.
Okay, so another question is from Bu Frida. It's for me. So she's asking about, can I respond to her question about the differences on how culture could affecting emotion, expression and stress? Bu Frida, yes, culture can affecting how we express our emotion and stress. And actually, when I watched the video of Ashley and her participants, I actually doesn't really feel the stress between the couples because I know in Indonesia, we can express it more openly. So, but Bu Frida, I need to apologize because I'm not really an expert in romantic relationships, so I don't really know how the couple will express their emotion to each other. Maybe here we have Adriana and another expert in this area, but I know how children and their adult aging parents express their emotion to each other, because in my experience, the aging parents would keep silent when they disagree with their children, and their children would keep their talking and would express their stress like openly to the public, to especially in the counseling room, but the aging parents will keep silent and defend themselves with silently. So yeah, I think it's not happening in Australia because here I can see the parents and the adult children express their emotion openly to each other. So Ashley, I have a question, direct message from me. So this participant asked about, wait, I need sometimes to translate it. So she observed the first couple. She thought that the first couple is more open in communication and active in their conversation, so they can talk to each other, very flexible with their emotion. Otherwise, she saw that the second couple, the male participant is be more passive and close himself in the conversation. So she predicted the first couple be more satisfied with their relationship than the second couple. Is it correct, Ashley?
So remember is that these are examples of couples that fit into different clusters or groups. So while we don't necessarily have the data on this one couple in particular, we do know that for those that kind of mirror those similar patterns of kind of this inflexibility or lack of emotional expression, they did not differ from couples who were more emotionally expressive and variable in their stress responses. So we actually don't see differences at all between those couples.
Okay. Okay, so it doesn't mean that more interactive, the more interactive you have the conversation between the couples, then it would be, so if the couple is more interactive in their conversation, they will be more satisfied with their relationship. It's not.
Yeah, so that is not an association that we can make from the data, because remember, it's not about like how much we're communicating, nonverbal activity that we're having. It's how people responded or felt that they experienced stress. So that's really what we're taking away from how they perceived their emotions in the interaction and how that was then associated with their momentary experiences.
Okay. Okay, so here another question. For the second couple had the more stable graph, but I don't quite understand what is shown in the y-axis. Yes. So I think we can back to your presentation.
Let me go, let me see. I think I may have this. Excellent. Oh, look at this. Amazing. Okay. Yes, great. Thank you. Only took like 2 weeks and I got it. Okay, so let me go here. To this graphic here. So what you will see on, and let me go back here because this will be even more helpful, is that remember we took all 42 couples and we had ratings for the male partner and ratings for the female partner. So in this graph here is one couple's graph. And actually, this is actually couple one's data. What you have on the x-axis here is time. So you can see that for each dyad, we had 350 data points or 350 seconds of data. What then is on the y-axis is the rating of how much stress they had. And remember, we had it from a 0 to 100 scale initially, but then we aggregated it to then be a 1 to 5 scale to help in terms of easeability, or easeability for reading. We then took each of the couples ratings and moved them to a dyadic example here. So this is, we can understand how the couple functioned together. Then when we started doing some of our analyses, in particular, we took the log ratio. So if you have questions about the statistical analyses, I'm happy to answer those later. Yet in short is that negative ratings reflect lower stress, positive ratings reflect higher stress. So you can see similarly again on the x-axis is time, on the y-axis is stress. Does that help answer the question?
I hope so. How? This is Pak Amir. Can you reply to ask the question?
And then maybe we can go back to the, thank you.
Is it clear enough? Is Mr. Amber still here?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, okay.
He left the meeting. Okay. But I hope it's answered his question.
That means that I answered the question clearly.
Yep. So is there any question? We still have some times. Maybe the offline participant?
Hello, I want to know, since they act naturally, what are the question that make the stress level go up and down? Like maybe in the topic of love or topic of problem in the relationship, like that. Thank you.
Yeah, so if I understood correctly, it's like what makes someone's stress level go up and down? That is a very good question. And really, it's based on our own perception of how much these stressors impact us, what they mean for us, and even more so, are we able to kind of cope with these stressors, right? So we could face something that may be stressful. And so based on personality differences, some of those may be, more important to us, and maybe they're not. Does that, please go ahead.
I mean, what kind of question that make in the observation, what kind of question that the partner asks that make the stress go up and down?
Oh, I see. So in the self-report measures, we did ask a series of 10 stressors. And we said out of these 10 stressors, which we would consider common stressors, can you rate the percentage that you feel as though this is stressful to you? Out of all of these 10, it had to add up to 100%. So what we did is that for the internal stressors, we then matched the partners' reports and picked the stress that they both reported the highest. So in these cases, it just so happened that both of these couples reported insufficient partner behavior or behaviors from the partner that made them stressed. Terima kasih.
Okay, so I have one question from our mysterious participants, actually, Ashley. So she asks about, she is interested in exploring dyadic interaction in school setting, especially in emotion expression, for example, between teacher and one of their colleague, or between teacher and one of the students. What are your suggestions that should be taken into consideration?
Yes, so to our mystery participant here, I think it's really important to understand, especially in a teacher and a student context, what are the characteristics of the teacher that you are interested in, and what are the characteristics of the student that you are interested in? Even more in a school setting, we kind of move from a dyadic analysis standpoint to a social relations model, because we know that, like, if we were even collecting data across all of us together, is that we're not just looking at one interaction, we're looking at the interaction between two people, how the other person is impacting our interaction, how these other people in the room are impacting our interaction. And so it's really important to think about, if you are doing any types of observational methods, that you take that into consideration. So the number of students that are in the classroom, what type of classroom is it, what time of day is the class being delivered, etc. In the context of some of the work that I had mentioned, if you're interested potentially in just one student and one teacher, then I think it would be important to have both reports of a teacher and the student measured at the same time. So for example, if you don't necessarily want to do observation data or kind of any type of physiology, is that you could ask people to rate kind of their experiences at the same time. So maybe you rate it once in the morning at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, whatever it may be, because you want to ensure that you have similar data points across time, so that you can say, when this change happens in one person, what happens to the other person at the same time, and what does that mean then for the system? So my hope is that that is helpful.
Oh, okay. But Ashley, I actually curious how long that you need to take to gather all the data from all participants?
Well, that depends on your study design. So, I will say that we were very fortunate that we collected data for these 42 couples in one semester. And so a semester for us, 16 weeks. Yet we had quite a large team that was able to run the sessions. In a school setting, though, it's probably a little bit easier because you have fixed time, so you know that you can actually collect that data. For couples, though, we often ran our sessions on the weekend because we, understand that Monday through Friday, for those that have, quote, traditional work schedules, that they would have the most time together on the weekend to come into the lab, or alternatively, we offered evening sessions. So I think it's just really important to take into consideration the timing that you are interested in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So for all participants, don't forget to fulfill the evaluation survey that community provided here in the chat room in the Zoom. Or the offline, you can get the link from the committee there. Don't forget to fulfill the evaluation survey, and you will get your e-certificate after this research day. Okay, so is there any?
We do have one more question here, if we may, before we wrap up. Okay, excellent, please.
Okay, thank you for the chance. Perhaps I need to I need to clarify if what I perceive is correct or not. So in this research of yours, it is found that current measure have yet conclude. We have yet find a measurement to measure about stress in dynamic interaction within couple.
That's correct.
Okay, so based on that, I am interested to perhaps if I had a chance to replicate the same in Indonesia, because in Indonesia here we have a certain culture that have stress expression that is more open. So perhaps we can find more data that could show if whether or not it could differentiate satisfaction. Especially within my culture, I'm from Sumatra. We are okay to express our stress more. So perhaps it could, if it could be happen. However, based on this research of yours, do you have any suggestion about how do we, as psychological scholar and practitioner, measure the effectivity of counseling, especially if the root of cause of the problem within the couple is caused by stress? Because based on this research alone, so what I perceive is that we cannot really pinpoint whether or not our intervention actually make any difference towards the couple outside the counseling room. Do you have any suggestion about that?
Yes. No, thank you so much for your question. So let me kind of go back to your initial point, is that we certainly have measures using cross-sectional and even longitudinal, like daily diary research, to be able to understand how stress is experienced and communicated, and how do we cope with that stress in the relationship. So there's been a lot of work done in that field, yet we understand these, I would say, from a very general perspective, right? Oh, this is how couples cope. This is how maybe we can teach couples to cope with the stress. Yet we don't know in those momentary experiences what really goes on. We know that couples therapy is certainly effective, yet it's skills that couples learn in the counseling session. Similarly, in our relationship education program, the skills of communicating stress and receiving that coping that you need to continue to practice. Because it's similar, like we often say that the best time to work on your relationship is not when you're having trouble. The best time to work on your relationship is when you're not having trouble. And like I often say, people are like, well, when should I start working on my relationship? Yesterday. Right? And that's a joke because obviously we can't go back in time, yet you should start working on it now. Okay, and thinking about these things. So in therapy, we often similarly also rely on self-report measures. How are things going? How was the week? Yet what these data tell us is that we can have these general reports, yet it doesn't tell us really how those interactions are happening at home. And we're oftentimes relying on our own perceptions of, here's how I thought the interaction went. And we know that often partners' perceptions can be different. Right? If you take a conflict and it's like, here's what I think happened. Well, that's not what I thought happened. Here's how I perceived that. So we need a little bit more scientific data to really understand these momentary experiences. And all that being said, is I would love, love, love to see this study replicated, or elements of this study replicated across cultures, because we need to have certainly greater visibility in terms of our our scientific communities that are represented in our journals. And that's something that I'm very dedicated to. And so I would be happy to continue the conversation. Terima kasih.
Okay, so Asli, we have another question from online participant. So here Rianti asking about what's the result of the research impact for the future of the couple vulnerability and applies to the dependent variable, DV, and high-risk relationships such as abusive partner?
Yeah, so this is an excellent question. So Hanum, I love that you're so engaged in research that DV was reflective of
domestic violence.
Me too, like so engaged in the research. You're like DV, IV. I love it. Yeah, I had a feeling it was domestic violence though, so that's great. No, I love that because research is so fun, right? Especially when you're doing your dissertation. So to answer the question, super interesting question that we actually don't have a lot of data on. And the reason for this is that bringing couples who have active engagement of domestic violence or perceptions of emotionally abusive relationships is very challenging for many reasons. Obviously, in terms of our ethics, is that we don't want to cause any undue harm. And so we, like in myself in particular, is like, it would be challenging for me to bring couples in that are actively engaging in these behaviors to then observe their dynamics for the purpose of science. Rather, we want to operate from a strength-based perspective to help these couples and mitigate those experiences. So oftentimes, elements of domestic violence or any intimate partner violence are often used as screeners. And then we offer those couples clinical tools and resources to be able to work on their relationship outside of a research context.
Okay, so apologize for me.
I love it. Research is so fun. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so I hope it's answered Rianti's question. Okay, so we actually still have time to our Q&A session. So if you have any question, please give your question. You can write or ask Asli directly. If you have, and I want to remind all the participants to do not forget to fulfill the evaluation survey, and you will get the e-certificate after in the end of this research day. The committee will send the e-certificate to your registered email. Is there any question? Any one question maybe? Is it the offline participant is all good, Asli? I cannot see anyone here.
Yes, they are marinating on all that they potentially have learned.
Okay, they still have to process all of the information. Okay, so I think we can end the Q&A session. Thank you for your sharing and this research day, Asli. And I learned a lot from you today, and especially about the domestic violence. Okay, it's not dependent variable. And I hope our participant also have the same experience as me. You will not get the PowerPoint of Asli's presentation if is it correct, the committee? But if you have any question, any further question about today's research day, please email the rpm-fpc@ui.ac.id. because the committee will be very happy to answer all of your questions. And also you can, so wait, I have the notes here. What should I say to the participants? Please wait. Okay. So I already remind you about fulfilling the evaluation survey. And please, if you want to follow our next research day or next research event in our faculty, you can follow the information in our Instagram at psikologi.ui. And we also proudly present our international conference. Please, Farina, could you please share your screen so the participant can see the advertisement? Okay, can you make it a bigger? I think it's not. Yep. Okay. So we also proudly present our international conference, Psychology from the East, Psychology from the West International Conference 2023 with the theme Wellbeing in the Digital Age. This is 2 days conference in November 3rd and 4th. And we are still calling for abstract until August 21st. So please join us at this conference. And if I don't get wrong, the conference fee is free. And I think the committee also consider to organize this conference in Bali. So if you want to get a holiday in Bali while learning about something, you can enjoy this conference. You can find further information about this conference in our website at psikologi.ui.ac.id or conf.portal-psikoui.com. Oh, it's so complex to see it. Okay. So in the end, I would like to thank you for your active participation in this research day and see you at our next event. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ashley.
Terima kasih.